I think all of us being able to discuss with you. And that was the whole direction of the meeting of trying to, so there you go.
Okay, perfect. Okay, then let's begin. And I'm not sure how you want to begin. I certainly offer some questions. Was there any other questions, Chief, provided to you?
No.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Then if you don't mind, let's just kind of walk through some of the questions I had sent to you. If you can help me understand some of the answers to that, I think that would be helpful for not just me, but I think all of us. So you want me to read the question, or you want to go ahead and read it and just provide a response?
I think that's kind of the subject you want to address.
I say we start at the top. Okay. First question simply is the RFP made available to private companies? Are you aware of that? Anybody?
Typically, like any RFP that we submitted, maybe back because I've never submitted one. But typically, RFPs are sent out as a public notice, but I did not contact the fire to say how he.
Can you just go to your mic?
Yeah.
How do I turn it on?
It's on.
It is.
It's on, but it's
on?
We're gonna turn it on, actually. No,
No.
we'll give you the portable.
I can be loud. Can you hear me now?
Can. A little louder, but we'll be good.
Okay, I'll do my best. So Riverdale submitted the RFP. I was notified to Chief Shawley through an email, so I don't know how Riverdale
Okay.
proposed the RFP to other jurisdictions or to other agencies. I don't know that.
Okay. The next question, I just, for my purpose, I need to understand if this was in fact a broad RFP, which means you can bring both public and private sector into this process, or if it was just targeted to just public sector. It was not clear. Maybe you would have known. Obviously, it didn't give you an answer. Next question, Chief,
I did have a conversation with Chief Shawley and asked him if it was sent out to private ambulance companies, and it was. The problem is typically they can't meet the fire needs of an organization or an agency as a fire department. So I do believe, without having seen it, I was told that it was sent out to private ambulance agencies.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Is the EMT advanced level requirements new, okay, to Riverdale because they called it out in the RFP, or was that just pretty well standard that they themselves were holding before they decide to consider removing the ambulance service from the thing? Was this requirement for EMT advanced level requirement their normal operation, or was it just basically required then for anybody who's going to bid on this particular RFP?
No, that's the standard around the county.
Okay.
So that's up to the agency if they could provide the EMTs, and that's the standard around Weaver County, that level of service.
Okay, so nothing new. Everybody would then, who has that capability, would qualify if they have those skills. Perfect.
Right.
Since the EMT advanced level certifications are required for this work, does Royse City have enough people to support the requirement?
Yes.
Okay. Can you give me kind of a number of what you think that requirement might need to support that?
To support the response into Riverdale. It's no different than we have now. So right now, we take our current staffing as it is, having 2 full-time running ambulances that would respond into Riverdale and continue to respond into the Royse City as well.
Okay, so
How
if,
many's, can
Go
I
ahead.
ask a question?
oh yeah, please.
How many's on an ambulance at a time?
2.
Two, that's what I thought.
Yeah. Well, the reason for the question, and here's the backing behind this, so you understand. And Chief, this kind of happened before you. Chief Golden stood right there, and he announced, Matt, maybe you remember, back in 2021, I believe, and he made this rather impressive comment. He says that a normal emergency situation, there has to be a minimum of 4 EMTs. And then and it shocked me with this comment. He says, and if it's a cardiac arrest, it has to be a minimum of 6.
Yeah, that's true. Because what happens, depending on the call that Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, you just need additional help. So however you do it is you'll send an ambulance. That's obviously for the transport and for other resuscitation needs or medical needs. And then you have paramedics who show up to give advanced life support. And then you have firefighters who show up to assist that. And that could be for various of reasons. So it's just a really good system to give whatever patient the best way of surviving or help that we can give.
Okay.
So there's a lot of hands that are needed depending on the call.
Yeah, and typically a two-person, if there was a requirement to move someone from assisted living to go to the hospital, you do that with just two people on in an ambulance just to take them there. Is that a fair statement?
It depends if there's lifting involved. We'll send an engine depending if it's a nursing home. Let's say it's outside of our jurisdiction. So let's take Lotus where Weber Fire provides the fire service. They'll send their fire truck. We send our ambulance in the combination. If a patient needs to be lifted because they're too heavy, then we work
Okay.
together. Yeah.
Okay,
I have a follow-up on that. So where we have the paramedics, and my understanding is Riverdale does not,
Correct.
we're responding into Riverdale anyway with our paramedics. So they may be responding with an ambulance, but we're still responding in as paramedics.
Correct. So yeah, we got to remember that the paramedic is a county-wide resource. So it goes wherever the call is needed. Now, there's geographical areas, that's kind of our response areas. But let's say Ogden's paramedics are busy, let's say Weber counties are busy. That rescue where it's county paid for is a county resource.
yeah. The reason I asked the chief that question and he provided it at a public meeting, chief, is because I asked Golden when I come into an incident, wherever those incidents may be, I keep seeing a fire truck. And I'm saying I says, do we always deploy fire trucks? Okay, when there in fact is ambulance requirement. There was a gentleman up the street from me that had a medical incident, and I was there in his house when the call went out, and there were 6 of the Roy team that showed up, and there was a fire truck, paramedic, and there was also an ambulance. And so I was asking the question because I didn't quite understand why would they driving a fire truck, okay, to what appeared to be a medical situation. And his response to that is because the firefighters in that truck were also EMTs.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So it's not unusual for us to basically deploy 4 or 5 people, okay, to a site, to a requirement, if in fact there's the need for additional help.
Correct. And you're correct if there's a need for it. Because in an alpha response, you could have what's considered a fall. A child injures an arm.
Yeah.
That's called an alpha. We just send an ounce. And then we do have discretion, meaning the captain to say that's not something we're going to go to. So we do leave it to discretion. But if you're called on certain calls, meaning Charlie and Deltas, typically engine companies roll out with an ambulance or a rescue.
Mhm.
So as a follow-up to that, if we were perhaps to take on the ambulance service for Riverdale, would we be sending fire trucks into Riverdale too, or would their fire trucks respond?
No, only if they couldn't meet the need. So it depends, that's a location. So that where it goes into the automatic gate agreement.
Right.
We don't have automatic gate agreements for ambulances because the purpose for that is there's a benefit to it. So if an ambulance goes in another jurisdiction and let's say you transport, sometimes we don't, sometimes we do, there is a benefit because you're going to get reimbursed for that.
Right.
With the fire trucks, no. So that would go into the automatic gate. So hypothetically, if Riverdale's on a hazmat, a car wreck, they don't have an engine available, then the next closest engine in the automatic gate agreement would roll out with Riverdale or in Riverdale and with our ambulance.
Yep.
So.
Okay, thanks for that. This statement, I just want to make sure, this statement was provided to Roy City during the Roy City packet, but it was not found in the RFP, and that's the reason why I was a little concerned about exactly the requirement of the contract. And what that basically said was, it says, are we obligated then to acquire all Roy City Fire Department, responsibility for medical service as a first responder? Well, you said in the packet that all we're going to do is send an ambulance in, but you says that all fire department services will be handled by Riverdale.
Correct.
Okay. But I said in my comment, I said, well, that wasn't found in the RFP. You said it. I've read your worksheet, but I went through that RFP and didn't see anything that suggested to anybody who's bidding that the only piece that was going to be provided was just the ambulance service, and all rescue, all the stuff that would normally take place by the city, they would continue providing that service.
Right. I mean, it's not stated because what's being asked is the ambulance service and nothing else. So I guess it's a question of how they asked it, but they're just purely asking for one portion of that, which is someone to serve and provide an ambulance service. So I understand where the confusion could happen,
Mhm.
but they're just asking for specifics. And, again, not being the one who wrote the RFP, we're just responding to the question that was asked to us.
Okay, well, it was interesting that they were basically made that statement. You certainly mentioned it, but I never read anything about that, and I would think that would be a critical requirement. But okay, bottom line is in my opinion, it was a misinformation that should have been put in the RFP.
Well, and I guess that's someone's opinion. I mean, I don't know if I really should respond whether it is or not. They're just asking for someone to provide an ambulance. So I can't speak to if it's misinformation or not. I just don't know if
Okay.
that's an accurate statement for me to say.
Okay, well,
Can I ask one question about the RFP?
please. Mhm.
The reason RFP comes to my mind is because that's what I do for a living. I respond and write to RFPs. My understanding is that I didn't read anywhere in this RFP that it was a best and final response,
Right.
which generally in an RFP, if they list it as a best and final, you give your best foot forward. And if they accept it, that's what you're committed to. But if it's not a best and final, then, you can flip it into, you respond with an RFI, request for more information, or you can turn the RFP into a discussion that we need more information before we can make the decision.
Well,
I
let's-
didn't see that it was a best and final.
No, well, but here's, and that's a great point, because I think that's a question I asked, Chief. I'm going to read to you what the RFP says, and correct me if I see something different than what we just got told.
Okay.
It says, this is the RFP. It says all submissions must be received on or before April 12th of 2024, no later than noon. So tomorrow at noon, we have to have a response in. Staff will review all proposals and determine which will be recommended to the Riverdale City Council. The recommendation will be brought forth in the first available city council meeting for final approval. Okay, that's what it says. Once final approval has taken place, the winning contractor will be notified and future meetings established in preparation for the event. Now, when I've done, to Joe's point, when I have done those type of post-award conferences or meetings, we're dealing with schedule issues. We're going to be dealing with timing. There's a few other fine-tuned things that have to be finished in order for us to execute the contract. That's pretty traditional.
Mhm.
But when the decision, according to what they're saying, is once a final approval has taken place by the city council, the decision's made. My concern is that there was a perception, and you kind of heard that too, that in a traditional RFP, you would basically have a best and final offer. Sometimes, I've been in RFPs where that's not the case, but certainly they can happen. But the point is that there was nothing in here to suggest is that they were welcoming after we submit after the 12th, that in fact let's come back and have some more conversation about what we really wanted to tell them and we didn't, or at least some follow-on conversation that needed to take place. That was not clear until after the approval was done by, in this case, Riverdale City Council. So I don't disagree with what he just said, but that was not stated in this document. And best and final offers are not necessarily stated in RFPs. I've seen many RFPs that are done. It was never stated, but certainly in this case, the writer of the RFP has the authority to simply says, I want to get a best and final offer. And typically what that is, it's a cost issue. They just want a best and final offer on the cost. Usually everything else is all tied in. Okay. This was kind of where this thing spun. And the reason why I really want to kind of get this, what about cases where they are called off on emergency? And we do see those cases, but let me focus a little bit on a couple of key things. In the packet that was given to us, Chief, it specifically said, and I just picked the month, January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2023. And it said, there is going to be 457 transports. That's what they average out to do. Okay. About 38 a month. In the document that you provided, which I really thought it was great document. You provided some interesting information. I'm referring to this one, Chief, which gives us kind of an idea what happened in the first 3 months.
Okay.
Okay. In that particular document, it basically says we rolled into Riverdale 112 times. Okay. 112 incidents where we basically responded in Riverdale. Now, this I would think would be the mutual aid agreements. It could have very well been paramedic service requirements. I mean, it's hard to say where all that may have been of the 112, but certainly we went in 112 times based on your data. Okay. Now, you know, if you extrapolate 112 incidents that we rolled into Riverdale, if you just extrapolate over a year, you're talking about 400 times we were going to roll in. And we do that today based on our mutual aid agreements, I assume, or which is not clear, we may have rolled in because we own the southwest side of the paramedic service for the county.
Correct.
Yeah, somewhere in there. What was concerning to me, and the reason why I was a little bit concerned, is because we're already going in there and now we're going to take the rest of it. And that's really what this is all about. It's whatever it is. Now, some of that may have been fires. I think you reported in your document there were 10 fires during the first 3 months respond. I don't know where those fires were, whether in Riverdale or Roy, but you responded to them. But more than likely, if you're responding into Riverdale, you were responding in with fire trucks or ambulance.
No, it should be, I think the number you're referring to is an ambulance. The 10 would have been the fires.
Yeah, fire.
And that's what there's no, just I want to make sure that this is clear. There's no mutual aid or automatic aid agreements with ambulance services nowhere in the county. And they do that just because what I said earlier, there's a benefit to whoever responds into those jurisdictions. For
Okay.
instance, I ran some numbers today just for gee whiz. We had 98 different jurisdictions roll into Roy where we didn't have a potential ambulance available for whatever reason.
Mhm.
And so the reason that's a benefit is if you do get the transport, you get the revenue coming in.
Mhm.
So there's no agreements with ambulance services because of that reason. With fire, where it's different, there is no, what we've talked about before a few months ago. If we respond into different jurisdictions, there's no reimbursement, right? But we do that to help each other out, to support each other.
So with your comment, then, can we assume that maybe when you were rolling in, maybe their ambulance that they do have was already on site and we were providing some other type of EMT support because obviously it wasn't necessarily a fire.
Now, my guess is they're either busy or couldn't staff the ambulance. And they could speak to that. I can't speak to that.
Yeah.
I can only speak to, there was a need in Riverdale for an ambulance and the citizen needed it. And we're the closest ambulance, so we responded. in.
Yeah.
And so if we transported on that, we got the revenue out of the billing on that.
Correct. And now if our rescue goes with them, so if it now becomes an ALS response,
Right.
that now obviously increases. If it's their ambulance, we're doing an onboard fee.
Okay.
It's like the rest of the county.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. Well, the important thing I wanted to draw from this was it's not knowing because I couldn't drill down deep into what those are, but it sounds like probably not a lot of fire, but we rolled into Riverdale in the first 3 months of this year, 112 times for a variety of reasons.
I know, I mean, I could just speak to this. I know we were called, I was personally called by the chief to say they couldn't staff it. And so we were also called by battalion chief saying, hey, they were called by their captains,
Mhm.
hey, battalion chief of Roy, we don't have enough staffing today. Could you go ahead and take our calls? And I've talked to Matt about this. We didn't feel like the need of the calls were so increased that we wouldn't be able to respond. We talked about this a few months ago, that if they're overwhelming us, meaning we couldn't respond to our citizens, or there's issues with us being able to meet the needs of our city, that's something we'd have to go talk to the city manager and their fire chief and say, maybe we gotta look at something different.
Yeah.
I didn't take the stance to say, no, we're not gonna respond. I don't think that's what's right. As anyone who calls an ambulance should get an ambulance.
Yeah.
So we were evaluating it. You know, I don't think it's good for me to dive into why Riverdale's not being able to provide it at the time until things changed. And so I thought, talking to my crews and everybody, that if it's not really overwhelming us, let's help them out. And really, this has evolved over 2 months ago, until we started really looking at it hard. And so I think some things are going on in River that I can't speak to.
Mhm.
And all I know is I can speak to with this RFP, and other than that, I can't speak to why they're not staffing the ambulance and those different needs. And that's something that's really needs to be directed to their fire chief and really their city.
So it sounds like we're already going in there quite a bit anyway.
We have, and so has South Ogden. And then I believe they were taking calls, but either way, let's say they had that ambulance, they were staffed, and they can't meet their needs. South Ogden, Roy, anyone responds into that city based on the need of the city. So
Mhm.
That based on stacking order like you do with other fire resources through
no,
dispatch?
it's a closest response, small depending when the call comes. So let's say it's over the bridge. If it's a second in, meaning they need an ambulance, Riverdale's overwhelmed with car accidents, whatever, they'll do the closest station. So that would be South Ogden or Ogden City. If it's on this side of the bridge, it's going to be now Roy and maybe somebody else. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And that's just, I mean, that's just the need. The patient needs to have the best treatment quickly as possible.
Oh, yeah.
So that
yeah.
makes complete sense. Yeah.
Well, and you said before, bottom line is that you got what, 12 team members on each shift?
Yeah, that depends. I mean, our minimum manning is 10 up to 14. And so it really day to day,
We're in
it
12.
depends what we have. We try to keep it at 11.
Yeah.
So,
So if you're keeping in there, depending on what's the demand is, trying to keep somebody in Roy, you may basically have 6 people you can deploy outside of Roy if the requirement is, as long as you keep something in Roy.
right.
Um,
But the
and-
benefit is this, really it works pretty well. Even, I mean, in Roy, I mean, like I said, we had 98 calls, 36 so far this year, where it's wherever we're at, our ambulances, we can't respond to Roy. So
Mm.
it's a really good system that we utilize and work with each other, whether it's Clinton coming in, and really it is, it's getting someone patient care.
yeah.
So it's really a good system. I mean, you gotta think if we didn't have that system in place, then someone's waiting. You know, if you've heard police officers like, hey, we can't get to that car accident for 30 minutes
Yeah.
or whatever it is. So it really is a good system that really helps the citizens to get medical care.
Yeah, and Chief, certainly this, it's not questioning in terms of the medical need. This whole foundational conversation really has to do with cost.
Mhm.
And trying to understand in terms of the details, in terms of what we're obligating ourselves to, and then how does that obligation impact our ability to provide that cost? And remember, we're at a crunch point. The council will see the document, okay, that you've been working with Matt on the first city council meeting in May.
Mhm.
And it's going to require, to be very honest with you, it's going to require some hard decisions. And the council needs to understand, okay, about those hard decisions. Where are we going to get the revenue?
Mhm.
And the key would be is we certainly want to make sure that we provide services as best we can to everybody we can. But the question then becomes who pays for that? And when I read documents, the RP that simply says that those boarding fees for paramedic, under this agreement, the winning contractor will assume all those boarding fees. Then you start to ask us, well, what's the number? What kind of number are we talking about? How much is that going to cost? Because we take the assignment, we take the boarding fees. And so we just want to make sure we understand clearly all of the components so that when we sit down in May and we'll have some workshops, discussions, that we can figure out the best way to move forward. And I just don't want the Roy City residents to have to carry a burden in terms of, in essence, taxes to be able to support programs that maybe we shouldn't support.
Okay, do you mind if I speak to that?
Oh,
So
please.
I think this is where I'm a little, I won't say confused or maybe perplexed is I know a month ago when we knew that our proposal to give the license back to Weaver Fire.
Right.
You know, obviously there was a revenue loss of potential we don't know about. And so I think in this approach, I saw it as a real benefit where we're losing this and really in a matter of months, we're turning around and potentially getting revenue. And that's where I think some of the argument is. I think maybe I didn't do a good job, you know, last week of explaining this. So I'll try to do a better job this time. I think when we talk about the revenue, obviously we're not making a profit. If we look at the wages and what it costs to run the fire department, we got to be clear. It's not a profit, but it definitely subsidizes the cost of the fire department
Mhm.
by the $2 million, which we've shown in revenue. It's just like a school. We have to have a school, but it doesn't make a profit. We have to have different things that doesn't make a profit. But we're one of the only departments, and this is through any organization, that really can generate some revenue to help subsidize the operating costs of any fire department. So I think when I brought this to you, I thought this was a real positive. And so maybe some of these questions that I didn't think about last week or didn't answer too well. So I think I was a little perplexed on, it seemed like there was some disagreement on whether we should give up that license, and it's really gonna hurt the city on the revenue, which I totally agreed on. So I think that's what this was where I thought we were very fortunate that something like this would come about in a timely manner where literally within months, we're gonna be taking a hit on that revenue that we typically have counted on. And now we have an opportunity to get potentially equally the revenue or potentially even more.
Oh,
True.
agreed. And I like that
and-
comment because you just said, which we didn't know, what is that relationship between what we would expect to lose in the West Haven Hooper issue and what we would gain in terms of we were able to support Riverdale in terms of their issue. And if your numbers, as you're fleshing this out, come out that simply says it's going to be a wash, that's the kind of information we need.
Right. And that's why the numbers, this was provided by the Riverdale Fire Chief,
Mhm.
and these are actual numbers. And so you can actually predict pretty closely, but potentially, because there's an average here, the potential what we're getting, just like when I had Cody and Dart McGregor come in and they showed our chart going up. This is real data that we're giving. So when we talked about the cost, I guess we're talking more so of an employee and the time. Is that what we're referring to? Because when we talk about the cost, it's no different than what we were doing for West Haven and Hooper. Now it's reduced. And this is where we discussed, I asked my firefighters, do we think we can handle the call volume based upon their numbers and go ahead and provide the same service to the Roys? Because I want to be clear on that's obviously the number one thing is, can we respond to our citizens? We're paying for those items. But this is also an offset that we can help us with the city that no other department gets this opportunity.
Right.
And
How do
so,
the numbers compare from West Haven Hooper versus Riverdale?
right, we may do more, and our firefighters are okay with that. We understand, and that's why I want to make sure we understand that we have a responsibility to help the city the best we can. Our firefighters are willing to do that.
Mhm.
Honestly, from a fire chief perspective, I would love to say, I don't want to do as many more. Our guys are getting burned out. They don't want to run as many calls. If I ask them that, sure, they're going to agree with me. But they understand that this is not profitable. It helps subsidize the cost of the fire department, and they're willing to do that. And really, we don't know the effect it's going to be, but we're willing to take the risk if it's going to help the city. And really, that's what it does. It does help.
Right.
It doesn't make a profit. And I think last week, maybe I didn't speak as clear to that. I maybe spoke to, it creates this revenue and it pays for all the operating costs, but it don't.
And
They
I think
don't.
that may have been one of the misunderstanding
Right.
to the public is it's brought out that, oh, you're taking on Riverdale, not knowing that we're losing Hooper and West Haven, and we're doing it to help balance out
Correct.
the costs and the subsidies.
Yeah, but here's the piece, and Joe makes a good point, but I'm just saying to you is that, so there's no confusion, which is why I said there's risk if we don't understand the issues. The agreement you have with Weber Fire says that we're going to pick up Peachtree's requirements, and I think your document shows 181 calls last year.
Mhm.
Okay? They're going to take Lotus, which is about 108.
Mhm.
And if you kind of look at the surrounding, as best I can tell from your data, the hundreds of the calls for ambulance services are coming from those assisted living facilities.
Mhm.
So to your point, if we're taking on basically, and it makes sense because Peachtree is right there, it's right next door, across the street, then I go back to the question, how much did we actually lose from West Haven in terms of potential, just if nothing else, service? And then the other question is how much we gaining on top
Correct.
of that? My gut feeling is going to be, and you're the expert, Chief, so that's the reason why I'm asking, you're taking on a lot more. It's not a 50-50 split because you're retaining a pretty good piece of that down there because of the agreement that Weber wants us to continue providing that.
Right, but then remember we talked about they're going to build 2 new stations. I don't know, I can't predict what Weber Fire is necessarily going to do with their
Agreed.
ambulances. I can only predict where they're going to put it and potentially predict the closest response model.
Mhm.
If you're correct, the Peachtree, that's going to generate calls. But again, I want to kind of speak to whenever an ambulance is being utilized, right? There is an inherent cost to daily operations.
Mhm.
We call it a utilization. The more that tool is utilized, the more. Now, what's hard about is the transports, right? We obviously there's a delineation where we transport or we don't. I can only give you data on revenue that we get from the transport.
Mhm.
But the more those ambulances are utilized and they're rolling out, potentially they're earning some revenue. right?
Understand.
Based upon the transports.
I understand.
And so the more that they're utilized, so you're right, it's going to be potentially, it could be more call volume, it could be washed, we don't know. But we're willing to take that on to see how it works out.
Okay.
And I guess I would say this, if I thought there was a real fear that it was going to overwhelm us at this point where we're at with the call volumes, where it's statistics and the data is showing today, then I would question that. And I would suggest you that we don't do it. But is that, I guess I'm hoping, I hope that helps with why I chose to submit this to the council and why I think it's a
I
benefit.
agree. And Chief, you're the expert, but please understand where I'm coming from,
Okay.
okay? Chief Golden stood right there and told every one of these members of the council, and he made this comment, which still resonates with me. He says, I've got to have more firefighters. He says, I've got to be able to give my people opportunities to be trained, and I've got to make sure that they have the ability to take leave. And what the council did is it simply says, I'll tell you what I'm going to do for you, Chief. Although they did not, and he did not get the firefighters he asked for, the council says, we'll raise property taxes 10%, and we're going to give you 2 more firefighters to help buffer so that his team doesn't get burned out, and that his team, just telling you what he told me, his team can have time for his people to take leave. Now, that resonated with me because you guys are on a 2880 year time. Most
Right.
everybody in this world is on a 2080 period. You're a 2880. You're literally 800 more hours, okay, than every one of the people working in this city. Probably 800 more hours than everybody that's working in this state, because we gauge people's contribution by year. We gauge it at 2080.
Mhm.
You've got a big load and a big commitment. When this man is telling me, and he got my attention, that he says, I'm burning my people out because you don't give me enough people, the council listened and said this, I won't give you the 6 or the 5 or whatever he came in with. He said, I'm going to give you 2. And he says, I'm going to give 2 to the police department because they had the same argument. They couldn't get the training and have time to take off. And the council gave it to him just for the buffer. So my concern is not knowing all the clarity and detail. Are we pounding on, we building on and adding more problems? Because Chief, your voice is going to be heard. And if you walk in here 6 months from now, a year from now, and simply says, council, I'm telling you, we got a big load, okay? We're carrying a big load. And you ask this council again that simply says, I got to have more people. You know what? They're going to give them to you. Because there's not a decision not to. We can't put our people at risk. We can't put our reputation. We certainly cannot put our employees at risk. Can't burn them out. But darn, every time we add another employee, it's not just the fact we're adding an employee, we're adding a lot of costs. So here's my comment. And as far as I'm concerned is if you tell me, I'm not going to ask you more questions. You feel pretty comfortable you can make this work. Okay. I've got to honor your understanding and experience and qualification. If you're basically going to say, my last question to you, and you've answered it, and my question was, will Royce City need to hire additional firefighters on all 3 shifts to be able to meet this demand? The demand of the 180 we're going to take out of Peachtree, and I think there's 457 calls that will come out of Riverdale. And if you're saying is, I think we can do this, then I'll take your word for it. And as far as I'm concerned, press on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Council, any other questions?
I have another comment. So if Riverdale does give us, and this is a hypothetical what if, and maybe not even at this time, but if Riverdale gives us this license and then we hire 4 more people, can they come back and say in a year, you know what, we've lost a lot of revenue. This was a money generating, we want it back?
No, once we have the license, we would have to do what we did with Hooper and West Haven.
So we'd have to, if they requested it back, then we'd have to release it.
They'd have to prove they could do it better.
Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
But
But
Be-
they, so let's say hypothetically, they decide, we want to get 2 ambulances, whatever they want to do for staffing. They could go ahead and submit a request to the state, just like Weber Fire
Okay.
District did, and then obviously there would be a decision to be made.
But it would be ours for the taking until we decided we don't want it anymore, and then we could put it out there again. So in a year,
Uh,
if this happens,
sure,
we
I-
don't,
Sure, that would be an option we could do, yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
that's one of the things on the
Okay.
reverse end of that. If we take it and we realize, hey, this blew up and we can't handle it, we could throw it out there to see if somebody else wants to bite onto it.
Right, because we're not hiring 4
No.
firefighters.
No,
to-
no,
To
I-
do this, so, and we were gonna give it a year.
Yep.
And then if it didn't work out, then we could just throw it back out there and we don't even know if we're gonna get it anyway.
Correct. Right,
I
right.
just,
So-
I believe in being fully transparent rather than being sneaky and saying
Right.
in 2 years, fully aware, like, well, this is gonna be really busy. I just want more staffing.
Yeah.
I truly believe that we could operate the way we are now. And I asked our fire, this is not just Chief Williams doing the backs by firefighters. I asked them, I talked to them. And they said, we're going into 2 calls a day anyway.
Okay.
We're doing it anyway. So why not collect the revenue that we're gonna be going in there and get the ALS rather than onboarding fee? We're doing it anyway.
Okay.
Now, why I thought was to be fully transparent, if the workload becomes more, and you're right, Chief Golden was right. At the time he asked, he had a need. If down the road that they overwhelm us, you're right, we're gonna have this no different than any in your jobs. If the workload overwhelms what you can accomplish, then you have to hire more staffing. If
Or you
we
cut
have,
the workload.
for
Right,
instance, like I talked about, we have ambulance 33. It's an ambulance that does our ALS transports. We jump staff it to respond to the ALS transports. If that ambulance rolls out more, potentially it's being utilized more. It generates revenue to help subsidize the fire department and the city needs. And that's one way we can help with the city. And we feel like we're doing our part
Oh, I
to
know.
help the city where we
Yeah,
have
right.
great opportunity. For instance, I just, if you don't mind me sharing this, I just kind of ran some numbers. We took an average of an ambulance driver from 1 to 6 years. That's typically where they ride an ambulance. I took their wages. I did an average, an average wage. This is fully loaded with all the benefits. It came out to be $72,927. Okay, you times that by 12, the cost of those 12 employees is $800,075 and $124. So by us subsidizing, helping, it's paying. I think we got to remember this. This ambulance service pays for some free firefighters. We're obligated to have firefighters to respond to fires. We all agree with that.
Mhm.
So by having an ambulance service, initially it's paying, and I just took this number here, this figure. It's with this number here, it's paying for 12 firefighters. You're getting 2 different people for free, 1 for free. You're getting your 12 free firefighters and you're doing an EMTs. So this is why it's such a benefit is we're able to use, just like the paramedics. The county funds 8 positions. We're utilizing 8 paramedics to go on a fire with us. So this is how it's helping the city. So I want the citizens to understand that the reason why we're doing this is it helps the city and we're willing to do it. The firefighters are willing to do it. And so I think I want to make sure that's clear that I didn't do a good job last time and I could go on, like I could say, I can increase the number and equal out to the 2 million that we brought in and how many firefighters that we are allowed to get meeting national standards that we're trying to do, which helps us with the ISO rating. And so really this ambulance service, you'll see that's why all the fire departments want them. It helps subsidize the cost of running because we all know, everybody in here knows public safety is very expensive to run. You guys know that better than I do. And so to me, what a better timing to take this on. And I don't know what the future is going to predict. I can't say that. All I can do is be transparent that potentially down the road, I don't know if it's 2 years or 3 years, if the calls volume overwhelms us and we can't respond, and this is a discretion, we got to put a pencil to it. I may come to you and say, can we put a plan in place? So for instance, we could do a SAFER grant where they help provide, the government provides those positions. And then later on, the city has to pick it up. There's ways that we can do this. And maybe potentially I want to be asking for at the same time. Maybe down the road, could we get 1? Could we get 2? So we're not here. I'm not here to ask potentially for 4 at the same time. I was going to ask and be transparent, say we may potentially have to help. So we utilize those ambulances more often and more frequently. So they help generate some revenue to the city.
My understanding, and I can't really speak to it, and is the reason Riverdale's getting rid of it is because they're in a tax situation. They were granted additional taxes that's sunsetting. They have to provide a fire service by constitution. their concern is that if they're running the ambulance, they may not have enough firefighters in the station to staff the fire trucks. And they want to focus on the things that they are mandated to do to run the fire department. And so that's why they're not running the ambulance. Maybe that's
I
not
can't speak
correct.
to that. I have not asked the chief directly outright if that's the reason I
Maybe
just,
that's not the case.
so. So I
figured as
I
much.
can't speak to that. And I don't feel it's really my place to go get into the ins and whys of why they're not. I don't do that. So.
Yeah, and it is complicated, having talked to the Riverdale mayor, on what what the whole team is trying to work through. Chief, so you understand, okay? And it truly comes down to this. We got some hard choices coming. Our property tax rate has stabilized. In fact, I can show you evidence it may be dropping. We have three major ways by which we fund this city. Certainly property tax, sales tax, and franchise tax. Those are the big drivers. With sales tax stable, property tax stable, and bottom line is franchise taxes dropping, we just aren't generating revenue. And my concern, okay, I think differently than I think I can say to my council member, but I think different because I'm thinking, what are we going to be doing 5 years from now? What are we going to do in 5 or 6, 10 years from now? Because the decisions we're going to make today, okay, are going to have long lasting impact. And we've got to find ways by which we're looking at ways to look at all costs and make sure we're doing the right thing. I'm not saying that public safety is not important. It is important. But Chief, to be very blunt with you, okay, if we mess with your team, if we don't pay them, okay, what they deserve, if we don't stay pace, okay, with what's going on, you're going to lose them.
I can't agree more.
And if you lose them, what the crap are you going to do? How are you going to provide the necessary public safety to this city or any other city if you don't have the human resources and the skills you need to make it work? And if they can go to Clinton, okay, and pick an extra $1 an hour because Roy City can't deliver, that causes me to lose sleep.
Same to me.
Okay. So we've got to look out for what's happening. Chief, I'm going to tell you, this council's got some tough choices coming in May. Tough choices. Because every revenue stream we've got is stabilized. And you know what? All the expenses, the cost of life is going up. It's going up. And I appreciate Riverdale. They got a tough issue coming. They're trying to figure out how they're going to basically work, and they're getting really creative in what they can do. But but they're no different. Every mayor I've talked to, with the exception of Ogden, Ogden's got this thing called BDO. And I'll tell you what, they get some really interesting things going out there. But I am telling you,
Cash cow.
it's a cash cow. Every city, every mayor has got they're in critical mode in terms of trying to deal with the fact is stabilizing revenue. There's some tough choices coming, and we got to make have some tough choices when we get
That's
through.
why I'm here today. It is a tough choice because I'd like
I
to
know.
tell you all to say, you know what, we don't want to run as many calls,
No,
but we're willing to do that to help the city. I just want to make that clear. I understand the
No.
finance and the circumstances we're in, and we're willing to do that to help.
Okay. Chief,
Well, as soon as we lost that $250,000, which was the amount I was told when we were going to lose, give our paramedic to the 4,000 station in July. When you brought this up, I'm like, yay. I mean, now we have a way to generate some more revenue, subsidize our fire department. And that's the first thing I thought of. I mean, you live in Roy, you have in-laws that live in Roy, and I know your in-laws, and I know you would do anything to not raise taxes on the citizens, because then you would have hell to pay for, because I know your mother-in-law really well. But I just know that you've been so transparent and that you would do everything, to make this work. And like we said, we don't even know if we're going to get this RFP, and we might get it for a year. And if it's not working out, then like we said, we could give it back. But I think you've been nothing but transparent about everything. And I feel that I believe you then when you say that it will work with your firemen and they're willing to do it. And I just think that it sounds like a good thing for the city to do it. And I just think we should give it a shot. And I know we got Mr. Stevens here from Riverdale City that I know would like to make a couple comments about if you're willing to let him,
Well, be honest with you, I don't have a problem.
because he
Typically
has
what
some
takes place
facts,
is
some facts I
I would
think we
take a
need to hear.
vote to open up for public comment. And so, Ms. Stevens, you certainly, if you want to, just say, yeah, I'd like to make some comments and I'll, okay. Yeah, but let me do this, council. I just want to take a vote to basically open for public comments. Okay, all those who say, first, give me a motion to approve it.
I make a motion to go into public
Okay,
comments.
Second.
got a second? Okay, all in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Okay, Ms. Stevens, please, all we just need is your name and address for the record.
Address. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Bart Stevens, Riverdale citizen, and I just happen to be on the city council. I'm not here officially representing the city. I don't have that authority. I became aware of this topic. Ann is a friend for many, many, many years. Grew up in the same neighborhood. I grew up here in Roy, went to Roy High, blah, blah. Okay. Couple of things that just to keep in context. One of the things that Riverdale does not have is what I would call economy of scale, meaning we have one fire station, we have one ambulance. I think you have 2 fire stations, multiple ambulances, 2 or 3 are active, couple in reserve. We have 1. Okay. So we just don't have the economy of scale to run a 24-hour operation. Now, and part of the reason that we have looked at this is because part of it was correct that Council Member Paul said that was, by the way, my wife is a school teacher at Riverdale Elementary, so I think I know some of your family members, but anyway, that's offline a little bit here, just to say it's a small world. But anyway, we don't have, when an ambulance rolls, you have to have so many people in the station 24 hours. And when it rolls, that takes out and to the point where we're not leaving an engine fully staffed to be able to respond. We just don't have the economy of scale. So we have to focus on what our primary is. Now, we're also, you haven't been asked this, but I would suspect you're having a problem keeping or hiring enough personnel. We could hire more. They're not necessarily qualified personnel are not out there. I mean, we're going through to the academy to find the personnel. And I think that's a systemic issue, both with police and fire. Okay, so part of it is the personnel. It's just the nature of it. Okay. Now, Riverdale gets our revenues from the ambulance pays for itself. A lot of the times you respond, you transport, and you're transporting situations that don't pay. They're indigent. They don't have insurance. Or you're dealing with Medicare, Medicaid that only pays a certain percentage. So you can send out a bill and it doesn't get paid. Now we, rather than internally, we went to using Gold Cross as our billing agent. I don't know if you do that or not.
We use First Professionals.
Okay, same sort. And we actually had better results using where, and again, it was less expensive to the city. We got better results using a professional outside agency like Gold Cross. Now, outside of Weber County, I think Gold Cross, like in Salt Lake, has a contract to do, I think, ambulatory, where you're moving patients from a hospital to a facility, a nursing facility or recovery facility. Those pay really consistently. When you respond to an emergency, those do not. Those are less than what, so Ogden City has that contract here with Weber County. So, because believe me, we were trying to come up with ideas to see what we could do to increase our revenue potential for or usage of that ambulance. And that's contract's been locked up. Now, if you've got a contract for Peachtree and a couple of these facilities, good on you. Hope you keep them. Now, the economy of scale that you have of having multiple fire stations and multiple ambulances and crews gives you a great advantage. Now, as you lose the services for Hooper, West Haven, and potentially pick up Riverdale, I think that would not, I think you'll just be shifting from south to or west to east. Now, what other thing I'd like to bring up is Councilman Paul, you brought up about the sunset of our that we get. That's not till 2030. So we are. I'm sorry.
I didn't realize, I was thinking it was sooner than that.
Well, we're trying to be proactive, but one of the things that we're doing. Okay, first off, what happened is they took the revenues from sales tax and did 50-50. So you can keep it. Now, the 50% goes to the state and it's revenue shared based on your nighttime population, which Riverdale is about 9,000 people. Now, I think I've heard, Mayor, you've talked about how a lot of your revenue comes from the sales tax generated in Riverdale. So it's, you know, it's kind of coming out. Now, that said, GAP, general or government accepted accounting principles, says for government agencies or municipalities, essentially says that your property tax should pay for your first responders, for your you know, so fire and police. So based on that, in Riverdale, with our 9,000 residents, our first responders, our public safety should cost us between 780 and 800,000 a year. We spend 6.2 million because of the businesses, Riverdale Road, the freeways that we are frequently being called out on. 6.2 million, and that's not enough. It's going to be probably 6.6 in this next budget. But yet we're only get revenue for roughly 800,000. It's really, we're doing things to try to mitigate that. Yeah, we have to be creative. One of the things is we're in kind of in the opening salvos of campaign to maybe have the distribution changed a little bit for certain cities to include Riverdale. And your comments over the weekend and Facebook, Mayor, is great because that's going to be used to help educate certain legislatures to say, yes, even our neighboring mayor recognizes that there's some challenges in Riverdale. And so it's like, you know, this is a problem. This is what we're dealing with. And it's anyway, kind of.
But you did feel that your service did subsidize you.
It pays
Yeah.
it pays for the ambulance and pays for the people in it, and it subsidizes because the money generates goes to offset the cost of the whole fire station. Now it pays for itself. I'll leave it at that. How much more? I don't know. You have to kind of do a deep dive because it's all kind of put into it. Now, I will just tell one quick example. This happened almost 20 years ago. I was in the reserves. I was mobilized. I was sent to Iraq. My wife is a school teacher at Riverdale Elementary and had an accident. It was, and the ambulance was called. The ambulance responded from South Ogden. And they came up, and as they were treating her, a car was driven, being really crazy, came right up, and the guy says, I need help, I need help. And he had his mother that was in the passenger seat of the car, was having a heart attack. And so they went over and helped assist her. And another ambulance came. This is before Riverdale had its ambulance service. And that came from Roy. And the lady was having a heart attack. Hers was considered life-threatening. So she got the ambulance because hers is life-threatening. And the attendant from South Ogden stayed with her and they left. And then Roy showed up or actually they met briefly. But the point of it is there were two incidences at the same time, the same location. And she was riding in a Roy ambulance with a South Ogden tech. And the other person was in anyway, there's a lot of cooperation that goes on with having, where we support each other. Okay. Thank you. And if you have any questions, now I'm not here to speak about the request, or the specifics of it, but I appreciate you allowing me to mention.
Perfect.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you for your input. I think that's critical. And certainly you said it best, and the chief has been elaborating on this for a long time. We're all in this together. We certainly are not going to throw people out. Okay. We're going to just look at all options from all sides to make sure it's the right interest. So,
Yeah.
But public safety is, and I've said this before and I'll say it again. It's never about public safety. It's always going to be provided. It's always going to walk that. Chief has said many times, he says, I don't have enough people, and none of us have enough people.
Oh,
Maybe
I
Ogden does.
feel this pain.
Yeah. But we're all in this together to provide that. The issue we have to look at, and it's like anything else, is to look at everything to make sure that we're able to financially be able to make it work. And that was the real intent. What I think I just heard from the chief is simply says, he doesn't believe there'll be any problem being able to maintain and provide the service with the existing resources. So as long as he's committed, okay, to continue down that path, I guess we'll
Mayor
just
Dan, do I-
watch it.
Just so you're aware, if council's going to be speaking, we may want to close public comment.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I was just trying to respond to his comment.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you. Okay.
Make a motion, we close public comments.
Do it.
I'll second it.
Perfect. We got a motion and a second. All in favor?
I
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thanks, Matt. Anyway, chief, to his point, thanks for the input. Okay. Unless council has any other things they want to share, any other questions? Okay.
I've actually got to leave. I got a commitment as the chairman of North Davis Sewer District, so I apologize. I got to leave, but
Well, with that,
Hands.
unless you have another question, council, we're going to go for a motion. Matt, you have a kid?
And just a quick question. So if we do, the RFP is due tomorrow night
By noon.
or by noon. This is something that staff can do. I know that Chief Williams has been working on that, but is this something that you guys need to see before it gets sent out, or should we just send it out?
Just send it out.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't want to disrupt it. The process is already lean enough. You've got till noon tomorrow to submit. If the plan is, the council already agreed to allow you to do that. So we'll stay that course. This meeting was never an intent to basically try to undermine that, but it was certainly important to understand clearly, okay, what we're committing to if this thing goes through.
Okay.
So council, any other comments?
Thank you for answering all the questions.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Let's make sure
Second.
to say, hold on. I just want to make sure that I have all my stuff
Okay.
cleared. Okay. I think we do. So thanks, chief. Motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
I've
Any
never done that
opposed?
before. That was fun.
It wasn't.
Now I see, now I see what Joe was all.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to live with now two of them that basically decide when the meeting's going to be over.
Must be a fan. I don't know.
Thanks, Brittany.
And thanks.
Yes, I have senior pictures in a minute. It'll be good. Thank you, Mayor, for that. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a good recommendation. See you, Ann. Yeah, I'll see you down there. Yeah, I could. We're just done. Are we gonna have time to go get my truck? Okay. Okay, I'll do that.
I've got a lot done today.
No, if you want to go get her, and then I will clean up some things here.
Exit, like I can't minimize it over there because I can't see.
They have a key.
Ready. What does the view say? What does that say? They're like a minimize? There we go.
That's fine. Yeah,
Thank you.
that works. Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.